Priti Patel today, Mon, warns that Keir Starmer's plans to unpick Brexit is a betrayal of the British public that will never be forgotten. As we approach the 5th anniversary of Britain's historic departure from the European Union, Dame Priti said that the Labour leader is hell-bent on dragging us back in through the back door. Writing in the Daily Express, the ardent Brexiteer accuses Sir Keir of an undemocratic assault on reversing Brexit freedoms. Be under no illusion, Starmer is unpicking Brexit, the Shadow Foreign Secretary warns. Labour are pursuing with ideological gusto their determined plan to reverse our Brexit freedoms. Her warning comes as the Prime Minister and Chancellor Rachel Reeves both signalled in recent days that the UK could sign up to a pan-European customs area. Downing Street has said such a move would not cross any red line, while Ms Reeves said she would be happy to look at the proposals raised by the EU's trade chief Maros Sefcovic. Sir Keir has also been accused of forming an EU surrender squad to reverse Brexit as part of his plan to reset the UK's relationship with Brussels. A team of up to 100 civil servants is being assembled to run the UK's negotiations with a bloc, with insiders saying its purpose is to row back on Brexit. The PM will attend next month's EU Council meeting in the Belgian capital in what critics are describing as his most brazen act of Brexit betrayal yet. Dame Priti insists that Sir Keir is only getting started and that further surrenders are on the horizon. Starmer's actions are both undemocratic and unnecessary, she warns. She highlights Boris Johnson's Brexit deal, secured on Christmas Eve 2020, that gave Britain a free trade deal and trading opportunities that meant no tariffs or quotas. The deal supported and promoted British goods and firms, our exporters and our world-leading financial services sector, she said. Importantly, it was a deal which meant that Britain was no longer controlled by the EU, but Labour campaigned against this. And she warns that Britain, like the United States, should be unleashing our sovereign democratic freedoms by ensuring the government is working for you and answerable to the British people. Instead, she says, Sir Keir chooses to insult the intelligence of hard-working families and businesses, forcing them to bankroll his ideological dream of putting Britain back under EU control. In a final stark message, the leading Tory warns the PM and his unpatriotic Brexit-denying government, betray Brexit and you will betray the British people at your peril. Britain finally left the EU on January 31, 2020. It marked a huge victory for this newspaper, following a tireless crusade to free Britain from the shackles of Brussels. But Labour's planned reset with the EU appears to be gathering momentum. Speaking on Sky News Sunday Morning with Trevor Phillips, Ms Reeves gave the clearest signal yet that Britain could join the Pan-Euro-Mediterranean Convention, PEM. It was really interesting to see Maros Sefcovic this week suggest that the UK might be welcome in that Pan-Euro-Mediterranean customs framework, she said. We are absolutely happy to look at those different proposals because we know the deal the previous government secured is not working well enough, not for small businesses trying to export, it's not working well enough for large businesses either. We're grown up enough to admit that, whereas the previous government said there were no problems at all. Sir Keir Starmer's spokesman did not rule out future membership last week and said his red lines were that we will never join a single market, freedom of movement. The arrangement that's been discussed is not a customs union, he said. Our red line has always been that we will never join a single market, freedom of movement, but we're just not going to get ahead of those discussions. The PEM was launched in 2012 and aims to make it easier for 25 countries, mostly in Europe and North Africa, to trade with each other through common rules by signing free trade agreements to reduce or lift tariffs on each other's goods. Some business groups have backed the UK joining the PEM because it would help to maintain complex supply chains. But the previous Conservative government chose not to pursue it as part of a post-Brexit trade agreement. They feared it would surrender Britain's ability to strike independent trade deals and maintain regulatory autonomy. Reform MP Richard Tice said, clueless Rachel wants to constrain the UK into a higher regulatory regime with no growth and high taxes. This will reduce growth and we should be going in the opposite direction. Here is a summary of internet users' reactions. It'll give you some perspective from the other side of the fence. The company I work for develop property including within the EU. Before Brexit we always bought certain things from the UK because of the superior quality. Since the end of the transition period it has become impossible for us to do that because it takes ages to get anything with completely unpredictable timeframes and the cost to get it over negates the quality advantages. Now we source from within the EU. It was sad to say goodbye to our long-serving UK suppliers. If things change and so frictionless trade is again possible we would certainly reconsider. 63% of UK constituencies voted to leave the EU in 2016. That's a majority of 164 seats. The vote wasn't even close. The people have always been denied a vote to join the EEC in 1971, the EU in 1992, and to accept the new EU constitution in 2007. Parliament did not have the legal or moral right to do this. This limited the people's rights and sovereignty over Parliament. Joining the EEC/EU required the UK to surrender sovereignty, control of Parliament, and supremacy of justice to a foreign entity, which is unlawful under UK law, unless the UK has been defeated in war. The 1689 Bill of Rights contains the following oath: I do declare that no foreign prince, person, prelate, state or potentate hath or ought to have jurisdiction, power, superiority, preeminence or authority within this realm. The Act of Supremacy 1559, and the Privy Council Oath of Office state the same thing. Sample of a letter from Lord Kilmuir to Ted Heath from 1960, where Heath was advised that membership of the EEC would be an act of treason. He is clear that if we do sign the agreement with the EEC we will suffer some loss of sovereignty. This is clearly an act of treason because our constitution allows no surrender of any part of our constitution to a foreign power beyond the control of the Queen in Parliament. This is evidenced by the Convention, which says, Parliament may do many things, but what it may not do is surrender any of its rights to govern unless we have been defeated in war. Just got back from the Netherlands. The Netherlands' gas prices have raised by 800%. Last year they experienced a recession. Their Scheveningen shoreline was identified as one of the weakness links recorded. Everything's more expensive and affordability is showing how hard it is to live there. Exclusive: Keir Starmer's plans to unpick Brexit is a betrayal of the British public that will never be forgotten. Shouldn't political editor Martin Brown be aware that the majority of the UK electorate today is what is relevant? Trying to appease the narrow majority of 8 years ago doesn't make any sense. Today's majority is firmly pro-EU, even more so now with the return of MAGA. There is no betrayal, quite the opposite. No, 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 was de Gaulle's chant when Heath tried to get us in the EEC. Once he had got the Common Agricultural Policy, CAP, that had great benefits for French farmers accepted, he said yes to Heath because the CAP needed paying for. Research how Heath was rewarded. Our unwritten constitution says no major changes can be made without a referendum. We didn't have a referendum. Heath and Parliament bounced us in. Heath sailed off in his yacht manned with young boys. We have a government that is breaking its covenant with the people on many levels. He has shut down the British economy, started a war on the elderly which Labour research says could kill thousands. He has implemented a foreign policy seemingly designed only to weaken and isolate Britain on the world stage. He is pursuing a totally unsustainable migration policy, attacking greenbelt, farmland and environmental protections to accommodate migrant-driven population growth. He has turned a blind eye to racism. He has blocked a national inquiry into extreme mass child abuse. He has shown a differing approach to rioting and law-breaking depending on who's doing the law-breaking. He has openly attacked free speech and diversity of opinion. He has given us a justice secretary who releases extremely violent criminals early, a women's minister who doesn't know what women are. And he is evidently one of the most dishonest politicians in modern British history, having used his way into power. As if this is not enough, he wants to set aside the biggest democratic vote ever and force the country back into the EU, while at the same time insults our greatest ally, the US. He ingratiates himself with the WEF, whose leading spokesman, Schwab, is insisting on forced vaccinations for people everywhere and removing the trust that once existed on matters of health. There ought to be a way to challenge a government that is diametrically at odds with what the people expected from its pre-election promises. If ever a government had an undeclared ulterior motive that would never have received the approval of the electorate, this is it. I think such a government would be called dictatorial, far removed from democracy.